So Barbara, tell me how long you've been practicing eurythmy.
I started in '79.
In America?
In America, yes, yeah. I came over here. I never planned to actually stay here, from Europe originally. Came here for one of those gap year things, actually au pair. Wanted to experience a different culture, and here I'm still here. I found eurythmy over here.
So you're the artistic director?
I'm the artistic director since 2005.
And how many changes have you seen with eurythmy over the course of all these years?
Quite a bit. I mean, I started in the wild 70s. My class, when I started, was still right after the hippie generation. And so everybody was here doing eurythmy. It was, the wild and crazy thing to do. And, but also in the public, when we went out and performed, you felt people were kind of going, what is this stuff? Whereas now when we go out, people go, please, give me more. This is amazing. So it's incredible change, I would say, in the general audience, adults, children, whoever, wherever we go to. A kind of a more openness, an interest, a feeling that this is cutting edge, that this is healing, that this is beautiful, that this really makes an impact on people's lives. And that has really changed from being a very small group, I would say, to something that's more prevalent.
How do you think the new generation of eurythmists are going to fare in the modern world that we're moving into with technology? Do you think the art form will grow?
Very much so. I think especially because I think the quickness of life these days, and everything is, in an instant. And what eurythmy is all about is process and time. And so this is almost like a balm for the soul. So it's almost something you need to meet all the challenges of technology.
Do you think the public will understand eurythmy?
Yes, actually. It is, I would say, very much something like going to a modern dance performance, going to opera. It's always going to be a segment of the population. I'm not sure it's going to be ever, like the big arena or something. But someone who's interested in the art, yes, will find their way to it.
How do you find the new generation, their commitment to eurythmy coming in, maybe instead of ballet or another art form of movement?
People, I think, are very serious. It's I would say, harder to commit to an art training per se. To live as an artist these days is tough. It's getting tougher. I think the openness for the arts generally has grown, maybe not so much. So it's a real decision to take it on. But those who do really feel it's essential for their lives, for their well-being, for their next steps in life. So I think it's a really a serious new generation that's coming.
As we embark on this new endeavor, Shakespearean movement,
yes.
Describe to me how you feel when you first heard about it, knowing Shakespeare, knowing eurythmy. How did it affect your soul, your mind, the artist in you?
When I first heard about eurythmy, or in relationship to Shakespeare?
In relationship to Shakespeare.
I mean, Shakespeare is such a master that you feel everything that he says, the ideas that are there entirely incorporated in the sounds, in the meter, in the rhythm, in the breaths, the way he puts things together. So you feel there's never a gap between meaning and sound. And so as a eurythmist, you feel just absolutely excited, because you feel, Shakespeare, the epitome of the poet that really brings that to expression. And then in eurythmy, it's exactly where we work with, is the whole quality of language, and how language works directly, immediately, in movement, directly to the meaning, without any intermediary. So Shakespeare, I would say, is, the guy you want to work with.
So the meter of Shakespeare is almost like music in words. And what do you feel the public would consider Shakespeare in movement, where they see Shakespeare performed through acting? What's the major difference that you could articulate between Shakespeare acting and Shakespeare eurythmy?
Yes, with acting, you really put the individual through language, and now what you do in eurythmy is you keep the language back and you bring all that usually isn't spoken through the movement. So I would say eurythmy goes a step, it is closer to the essence, but yet unspoken. And I think that's its genius. That's what attracted me so much, that you felt, all right, here I can go further than words. From one point of view, you can say that, because I come directly into the movement. And so as an actor, you bring it through the words, and now in movement, you can bring that same articulate quality through the eurythmy, because you work exactly with words, you work with sounds, you work with groupings. And so you bring it out on a different level, a deeper level from one point of view. It always depends how you look at it. Yeah.
What can you tell me about the space that you work eurythmy in? What happens magically to space when you perform eurythmy, or what are you attempting to transform?
Yes. I mean, eurythmy, what is so unusual, I think, from the other dance arts, I did dance when I was younger, it was really that you face frontal, and through that, if you face frontal into space, then you have something in front of you, and then something behind you, something on the right, on the left. Generally, in dance, you follow your nose, here is front, but you don't really move into the back space or the right space or the left. And through that, the audience wakes up, oh, I see, it's very different if I go backwards. It's a different quality that the space takes on. If I move forward, maybe more of a passive quality, something more active when I go back. When I go right, I work more in time or duration. So you relate to space in a very subtle way, I would say. And slowly, the audience starts picking up, oh yeah, when they're going backward, there's something, you can say, of the higher ideal that you want to speak to. When you come in forward, you want to come into the more earthly concern. So each quality of space starts to be, you awaken to that.
Tell me how you discovered eurythmy.
As already since I was young, I always was interested in dance. I love ballet, I did modern dance, I did some jazz. I was very connected with movement. And then actually when I grew up and finished high school, I decided to do languages and do politics and do all kinds of stuff, but I realized very quickly that, wasn't the thing. And then also dance wasn't quite it. I always wanted something that was more articulate. I felt it connected to something deep in the human being, but it seemed very, in a way, amorphous, and I was looking for something that was not so subjective either. And so even though I loved it, I was always searching. And then when I found eurythmy, I said, oh, here is something that has the movement, but also connects to a larger, you can say, cosmic picture. And at first, I didn't like it at all when I saw it, because I think when you watch eurythmy, you have to really change your viewpoint, how you look at it. Quite different looking at dance, looking at modern dance or ballet or whatever. So it was like, what is this stuff? But then as I did it, and I experienced the power it has, these sounds, how wow, ba, and da, and low tones in music, high tones in music, major, minor, I was enthralled, and that was it. Literally, I did a class, and that's my life's work. So it was pretty, instant.
So we should do the headlines. What is this stuff?
Yeah.
Eurythmy, what is this stuff?
Yeah.
Would that be good? Would that be good marketing tool?
Yeah,
Eurythmy, what is this stuff?
Yeah. That was as a sort of 17, 18-year-old. We're kind of going, yeah. And then, but it really hit me then when I did it.
How did the audience receive eurythmy performances across the world? Have you traveled in different countries with this?
Yes. And I think it depends very much, each country, very different. I mean, we've been in Europe quite a lot. There, of course, eurythmy is more known. In America, it's really pioneering work. Very few people really know what it is. We perform, of course, in Waldorf schools and such people who have eurythmy in part of their curriculum. And even there, rarely do they see eurythmy troops coming through. There are not that many professional groups that travel around. So you feel it's always, what is this? And tell me more. And as I already mentioned earlier, there's much more a kind of a direct connection to it than there used to be earlier. Whereas in Europe, it's much more, oh, you're doing that kind of style of eurythmy. Oh, and you are working in such and such a way, and you work with English eurythmy very differently if you're in America. So there's much more the connoisseurs, you can say, in Europe. And then if you go to Japan, again, and China, when we were there, of a kind of an admiration, but sort of also bemused at what this is about. Yeah, just really finding their way and people finding it beautiful, and then a lot of people then from Asia that come over here wanting to study it and really find a connection. Yeah.
That leads me to the next question.
Yeah.
How is eurythmy performed in other languages?
Yeah, that is always fascinating because, you work with the sounds and you can say the sounds are universal. Basic sounds, a, e, I, o, the vowels, you feel them in slightly differently modified in all languages, and each language has a few extras that are different. But yet that experience of having as a sound and then in a word usually points to a common soul experience. What the fascinating thing is how does a French person, an Indian person, a Chinese person, or an English person differently see the world? And I think it really opens up the world to you. Yeah, so you see, for example, a tree. In English, we have this very strong, this t, and then the e, and the e is the sound that really has to do with uprightness. In German, you have Baum, so you have this b, this sound that you feel the real volume of the tree, and the au, you still feel the old gods living in that tree. Yeah, and in French, you have arbre, and so you have this wonder. This being of the tree, arbre, and has also a little b, so it has this in a way sculptural aspect.
Almost like the German ba.
Exactly, so you have the Baum, but there it's in a way the big thing is the Baum. Here the but more first comes the wonder, and then comes the sculptural part. Yeah, so each language you can see how you can learn from each other, because I look at the tree from that point of view, you from that point, and you from that point. But yet we're all talking about the same being, and we're just coming at it from different points. And I think it really leads to appreciating each other and the different viewpoints, which is so important, I think, in our world.
How do you think Shakespeare, how do you think English with Eurythmy, will it be dominant throughout the world? English and Shakespeare and Eurythmy will it be understood throughout the world, even though these cultural and language differences?
Oh yeah, I feel Shakespeare is so loved everywhere, and I was just in Germany and heard Shakespeare in German, which was interesting, right? Very different, and you see, but the spirit of Shakespeare, of course, stays there. But you feel how perfectly wedded he is in the language that he chose to be in English, and how in German you have this sculptural quality to the language. You have these strong consonants, whereas in English they have the consonants, but they immediately go off and go into the next connection to the sound. So you really feel, there's a very different inner spirit that lives in the language, and so you feel perfectly wedded. And all these English sounds of w and th that you don't have, for example, in German, you don't have them in French either. And you feel, here has something of the watery quality of the English, and th of that their land is unstable. There's something that goes deep, but goes not of a d nature as in German, but th, things move. And so there's a lot, and of course all the elemental beings that Shakespeare brings in his plays. You feel, of course, he has this direct connection still to that which is invisible. And of course, Eurythmy does best bringing to visibility what is invisible. And so, for example, doing Shakespeare, I would say with Eurythmy, Ariel and even Caliban, or all the fairies, of course, all the lullabies and in Midsummer Night's Dream is perfect for Eurythmy, because you bring something that is not of a nature of this world, but of another world. And just there, I feel Eurythmy excels.
Okay, how do you think the character development in Shakespeare's plays, or even other playwrights, T.S. Eliot, the character themselves, how would you and how do you interpret the character versus the language that the character is speaking? Is there an intonation or movements that let you know that this character is saying this? So how does that work?
Yes,
versus acting.
Yeah, right.
There's the clothes and there's
right,
the character,
yeah.
and there's the playwright's name and who's
yes,
character.
Right, yes, yeah.
How would you see that?
Yes, I think with Eurythmy, you really look directly at the language itself. For example, you have Caliban, and just that he's called Caliban, k, sounding k, and then ban. Yeah, a lot of plosives that are in that name, as opposed to Ariel, where they have the R and the L. Yeah, so you feel in that already you get an indication of the character. This is a character that's earthy, that is uncouth, just from the sounding itself. So you play with the sounds, and out of the sounds you see, that character will have these qualities. So when you work with him, you usually will find then, when Shakespeare speaks about it, he uses those sounds and a kind of a rhythm that goes with that, that leads us to the character directly out of the language.
So the characters are, each one of us individually, are a sum total of actions and habits and words.
And really, you can say it, you understand the essence of the character through the sounds that are put together to create this name of this character. And in the name, you can find the in to what the character is about. And so the characteristics, I think you find through that, the characteristics of a Caliban or an Ariel or a fairy. Yeah? So a Titania or an Oberon. Yeah, you get indications, and then you look at the speeches themselves, and because Shakespeare is such a master, you find, oh, right, that lives through that, and then the quality of movement will arise of that, the way you shape the sounds, and how then these sounds shape the words that will have the character arise for you. So really living into the laws of language that Shakespeare gives you, and he's so perfectly able to bring it right there. So it's such a pleasure, not always do you have the language and the quality of the character and the spirit of the being so united. And Shakespeare, I would say, is a master at that.
What would you like to tell audiences that would be coming to see the performances that you're developing now through Shakespeare? What would you like to say to them, if you could, the experiences that they could prepare themselves so they would be able to receive it?
Yes. So often we have music and language in the background, and then people move to it. Yeah, and now you have to almost consciously really see that the language and the movement are united, or the playing and the movement are united. So you actually have to make a bit of an effort as the audience. It's not just sort of, oh, there's some music and there's a movement.
So
oh, very nice.
It's not a spectator sport.
Yes, exactly. It's not a spectator sport.
You're actually an audience member participating in the performance.
Yes, yeah. And I would say we have people who immediately get that, and others who kind of go, what? And they feel, they kind of...
I thought I was just coming to see it.
Yeah, exactly. You just sit back and you just, see this thing washing over you. Really, if you start seeing, the music goes down, it's low. Suddenly you see all these people, with gestures that are going low. And then suddenly there's quick, light movement, and you see all the movement around. And then you see how, for example, in an orchestral or chamber piece, here's the violin, here comes the viola, and how do they play together? Here comes a cello, and they create the stream of music you usually only hear. Now you see it, and how these intermingle, and you see in space what you usually would only hear in sound. So suddenly here it's spatially presented.
So audience participation is key. And
yes.
no loitering in the audience.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You're coming here for almost like a cosmic workout.
Yes, that's true. That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Do you think the next generation or the next two generations of upcoming artists will embrace Eurythmy and your work, your life work, and the work of people like yourself that have brought it to a certain level? Do you think that you could help them carry it forward, those that are coming?
I think I think there is a real, you can say, a real hunger for something that has meaning, something that gives you strength to meet what's going on in the world right now, that you feel, can be nourished. And coming to poetry, coming to movement, coming to music, I think is essential, actually, to go on. And so that's what I feel when people come, that they really wish to take this up as a next step in art history, to go further in artistry, not art history, and also for themselves, but also for what is necessary as a next step as humanity, I would say. What we need to actually come back to our humanity and come to that essence of what, as genius of Shakespeare can speak to us, or Beethoven, or Chopin, or whoever it is that brings this.
Let's talk about tone eurythmy versus speech eurythmy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you have the whole realm that you work with poetry. Shakespeare everything. Also stories, of course, when we go to children's schools, to Waldorf schools, we bring many different stories from all different cultures, for all different ages, stories, plays, whatever. And then there's a whole part of music. And we basically work with the whole repertoire, classical music from Baroque through 21st century music. And there again, the inspiration comes out of the music itself. What is Bach in a fugue? What does he bring? How do the voices intermingle? Here's a soprano voice, here's the tenor voice, here's the alto voice, here's the bass voice, yeah? And you feel, oh, right, how do they connect together? What is the rhythm? What is the harmony? How do they connect? How do they separate? When does the subject come back? When does the counter subject speak? And all of that is rather complex, actually you can bring to expression on the stage.
You must have had many discoveries over the years, as well as other performers. Is there a body of work or manuals or collective instructions on just what you spoke about, all these discoveries about how the words were in movement and tone? Are they offered, are they collected somewhere, or is it a art to art, you pass it down?
It's both. It's both. There is, of course, the descriptions of when Eurythmics first started about 100 years ago. Yeah, a little over 100 years ago, when first the indications by Rudolf Steiner were given to one young woman who then worked with it, and then he gave some more, and then they worked with it further, and then it started spreading. So there's a lot of oral passing on from
tradition.
Yeah, exactly. But then eventually, of course, it was written down. Steiner gave lectures on the sort of basic principles of eurythmy that he wrote out on music and on language, and then also the different eurythmists that were part of that very early time in the teens of the last century also wrote their stories, of how it was taught, and then how it went on, and the next step into Shakespeare doing Midsummer Night's Dream and all the fairies and all the, all the beings that are in there. So we have both that, and now recently also some of the 100 years later, a lot of editions have come up, going back to the history and having interviews with some of the older eurythmists from 100 years ago. And so there is both, but still very much, I would say, it's an oral tradition. The teaching, even though you can read it, but there's so much experience and that has accumulated over time, and so many discoveries have been made that then you bring it directly. That's always the best. And teaching, of course, you can bring that across. There are books, though, that will bring some of that.
How do the seasons work with eurythmy? Is there a seasonal influence during the seasons of winter, spring, summer, fall? Are there certain performances that you would do during different times of the year that would work better with the human soul? Is it just an annual?
It's again, I would say the answer is both, because I can say there is, for us as a performing group, there is a rhythm of being able to go on tours, on performing, just general evening performances or children's performances. But of course, we very much work also with the seasons. We have the season of the fall, Michaelmas season. So there are festivals that we prepare specifically for that time when summer changes into fall, and all that entails not only the going to sleep of the outer nature, but the waking up of the human being inside, and then going into the whole Christmas season. So of course there's so much music and so many stories and so many poetry, so much poetry that connects to that season too. So we have festivals here in the local community, and also often if you go to Waldorf schools or other communities for those of special needs, really try to work with the seasons in order to, as a human being, to not let it just happen, but really make a point of, yes, this is an important point in the moment, and I can really meet it and bring eurythmy, and other arts too. The same thing in St. John's fires in June, or Easter. So all these different festivals also are part of the work.
Let's talk about the curative eurythmy. Even though we're speaking about performance and art, how is that affected with children with special needs and other people that have illnesses?
Yes. So it's usually these days it's called therapeutic eurythmy or eurythmy therapy, and you can see how each sound has a profound effect and comes out of the sound that we're speaking. Now, if you're holding back, in a way, the movement of the larynx, and you're saying, I'm not speaking, but I go back to the movements that create that sound. I have to use certain movements here to say B. Yeah, I can't say B with my mouth open. That doesn't work, right? Yeah. So there are certain ways I have to move. But now, if you, in a way, transfer that movement that usually here and comes out as B into a whole movement, then I come to the eurythmic gesture B. And each sound has its particular formative quality, and it connects to a specific aspect in you as a, you can say, physiological, anatomical human being. So there's whole sequences of sounds that are prescribed for certain illnesses. Yeah, and so you can work on. I'm not a eurythmist, therapeutic eurythmist. You have to talk to my colleagues who really work with this. But then you have a whole sequence that you, for example, work on kidney issues or heart issues, or if you have cancer, there's series that are given that you then work with, which will strengthen either the immune system or work on posture or work into the organs. There are pretty strong healing powers in the eurythmy. As true art, I think any true art is also healing. And so you feel these aspects of eurythmy, these building stones of the sounds, also tone eurythmy, low tones, high tones, phrasing, they also have their differently, but they also work on the human physiology. And so in this case, when you work with therapy, you also work as a therapeutic eurythmist with a doctor who has studied, a regular doctor who has done extra studies in anthroposophical medicine, who can then prescribe together with the therapeutic eurythmist, and then you have a one-on-one session, because then it's really for you specifically that you would like to work on this. You need to work on your feet or on your heart or on your ears or whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
I see. What about breathing? Breathing must be important with movement, and this isn't yoga.
Yes,
Tell me about breathing and what you've discovered over the years through movement in eurythmy. Are there discoveries you can share that the public would understand or appreciate?
Yeah. I mean, you try not to put too much emphasis on breathing per se, but through the movement, through the eurythmy, you feel that there's a natural harmonization in the breathing. So we often do breathing, what we call breathing exercises, but they're movement exercises of contraction and expansion. But slowly through these exercises and all the rest of the eurythmy, you feel everything comes in its place. But you won't work on breathing in, breathing out. You let it happen via all the other movements that you're doing. But it will basically harmonize your breathing without specifically working on it.
Is there anything else you would like to speak about on eurythmy, your experiences, your dreams, your hopes, your wishes for the future?
I feel I'm very lucky that I found it when I did. I was very young, and I was really searching for a life path. And when eurythmy came to me, and I said, yeah, this is it, that I have been able to really live with it for so long. And it goes so deeply into the human being that I feel very grateful that it came at that time. And I've been very happy to meet so many people all around the world, working with them and feeling how there's something in it that can give hope and joy and a possibility for stepping forward into the world.
Barbara, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe, very much.